Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. Our ultimate goal of reaching Kyber and hopefully trying to get like top 50, top 100, something like that is still underway. We're in our next group now. We're marching right along. This is my first match of the new group, and my new group is actually pretty rough. It has 3 different General Skywalkers at Relic 7 in it. Luckily for me, in this particular match, I did not have to face that. My opponent did not have that team, so lucky for me in some regards. The roster that my opponent has, though, is no joke. It's a really tough roster to have to face, so let's just jump into it here. My opponent actually had a pretty unique roster, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but you can see in the thumbnail that they're using a Padme team and then a Thrawn with Geonosian's team for fleet. So it's pretty interesting. Looking at the relics, you can see that my opponent is the heavy favorite, like 24 tier 4 relics and 14 tier 5 versus 6 and 4 respectively on my own. So that's a pretty big difference. If you look on the top there, zetas is a huge difference, though. I have 90, my opponent has 37. It's an enormous discrepancy. Now, it is a pretty big difference, I realize, but if you look at my opponent's other pieces of their roster, like there's a lot of different interesting things that they've done. Their defenses are pretty good, which I'll show you in a little bit, but then beyond that, they have way more gear 13s than I do, and they have a really targeted selection of different characters in their gear. And as I said before, like their relic game was immense, really, really strong. Just looking at my success in Grand Arena versus my opponents, I've done a little bit better. Though I will point out that they had 20 more defensive wins than I do, and I don't think that my defense is necessarily that weak. And looking at their initial defense, I was actually not entirely sold that they weren't going to just go full defense here, just because they had some really strong stuff. You can see this meme here. I thought it was kind of funny, so I put it in. And if you don't want to pause it and read it, it's essentially just saying that your opponent might choose to put all really strong defensive teams in so that you can't actually get the first order feat, just to kind of mess with you. And of course I commented on the grammar of it because they spelled defense with a C instead of an S, and apparently that's how they spell it in England. And so people were asking me why I hate Brits, and I don't. I think you guys are great, and I just apparently get judgy for the wrong reasons. So nothing to see here. Let's move along. Now on defense, my opponent split the Jedi Revan team, the traditional one, into kind of a power duo with Jedi Revan as the lead in one squad, and then Bastila with a bunch of really high relic Jedi in the other. And then in the 3 squad zone, my opponent had really, really high relics. The lowest relic level here that you can see is level 3 on 2 of them, and then the majority of them are relics 4 or 5, with a couple 6s and 7s mixed in. And so it's a really, really strong zone. Like it kind of hurts my eyes as well, like all that red. It's hurtful, but it's something that I definitely aspire to be one day. One day I want a squad or zone this bright red. Honestly, it's pretty intimidating. So I immediately needed to go into the think tank here to figure out what I wanted to counter things with, just because I never really see Jedi Revan on defense ever, or Bastila for that matter, and not nearly this high of relics either. That Grandmaster Yoda's relic 6, I believe, and you know, they were all pretty well modded actually as well. So I wasn't really sure what I wanted to counter them with. In addition, that zone up top was really going to give me some problems if I didn't save the right teams for them. I also wanted to make sure that I had enough teams in reserve in the back zone for whatever I was going to face, and so that meant that I needed to come up with some kind of lowest common denominator squads to be able to beat these other teams in one go without sacrificing some of my more potent teams. And so you know, that was a pretty big head scratcher. I thought for a little bit about trying to use Jedi Knight Revan with you know, so just split them up the same way my opponent had, but I figured that was going to be a kind of a fool's errand because my opponent had way higher relics and way better mods and everything on all of those characters, and so you know, that wasn't really probably going to be a winning option for me. In the end, what I decided was to take some teams that I was pretty sure I was going to be able to win with, but that I didn't necessarily need for any of the remaining teams in the back or in on the side zone. So you can see I'm going to try Commander Luke here against Jedi Knight Revan without Bastila, and I've done Commander Luke against Jedi Knight Revan quite a few times. I know the kind of formula, though granted the formula changes because General Kenobi's not in there, or Bastila for that matter, so that was going to be different. And then Bastila really struggles against Traya, and even though my Traya is not the best geared, you know, they're all at 12 plus 5, but they're not 13, and most of the Bastila squad was gear 13, so I wasn't really sure what to expect there, but Traya does some pretty gross things to Bastila. At least that's what I was assuming. One thing I do want to note is that my opponent had a Darth Revan team on defense without Malak, if you missed that. And so I thought that my Padme could take that. I was pretty sure that she'd be just fine. Malak is always the sticking point for me, using Padme against the Darth Revan teams, at this point at least. And that would free up my Darth Revan to take on those really stupidly high relic General Grievous droids, even though I'd like to try my Jedi Revan against that team. I would be more idly curious about that. And then my Imperial Troopers were just barely fast enough to be able to counter the Jango Bounty Hunters team with the really, really fast Bosk. So, you know, this was all pending, of course, what was in the back zone, which my opponent could have just put, you know, their crazy Padme team in the back, and then I would really have to change some things up. So one thing that traditionally I've always used for my Commander Luke counter to Jedi Knight Revan is having C-3PO and R2-D2 both in the squad. And what that does is it gives you a bunch of turn meter, because if you're hitting Jolee, he's going to resist a bunch of times, and that means that you're putting expose on him, or trying to, but you're also trying to do all these other debuffs, and you're trying to essentially make him resist so that you get turn meter. And once you do that, once you hit Jolee, then you want to take out one member of the team here. And the reason that I'm hesitating is R2-D2, it's always tough to be able to time when R2-D2 should pop his smoke, because you want all of the aggro to go onto R2-D2. Like when Jedi Knight Revan goes, you want him to mark R2-D2 and take him out. And then you'll see, though, that Ayla did a counter to R2 and immediately stunned him, and that was a huge deal, because R2 could have gone by now, but he couldn't go because he was stunned. And so my Commander Luke here is just barely hanging on. Luckily for me, I did get the kill on Yoda right before I took out Jolee, so Jolee's gone for good, no matter what, you know, no matter what other shenanigans occur. And then I was able to take out the Relic 6 Grandmaster Yoda as well. And you know, I was feeling pretty good here now, because Luke had a little bit of extra protection. I'd taken out all of the really strong offensive characters at this point to be able to threaten him, so I thought I'd be able to get the win with no losses, which is always the goal. You know, you want to get full banners and everything. And old Ben went down pretty quick. That was nice. You know, and now we're just kind of trying to finish these guys off and you know, do it before they can cause too much damage. And so everyone's stealthed except for Luke and R2, and everything's looking pretty good. It's not necessarily the most efficient win, certainly, but then despite guard and everything, Ayla and Revan combined to kill Luke there, so that was a disappointment. But otherwise, I did get the win. 52 banners is not great, not really that efficient, but I did win, and I feel like I really punched above my weight there. So you know, getting the win with Commander Luke against Jedi Revan is always just a little bit of a risk, and being able to win on my first try after a long time was a pretty good feeling. Now on to the Bastila squad, and this one was something, it was kind of a throwback to earlier days back when we didn't have Jedi Revan. All we had was Traya, and then the people who thought that they could beat Traya with Bastila, and that didn't really work that well. A lot of times things generally went really poorly, but that was a long time ago. That's like over a year ago. So, you know, I haven't had this match for a really long time. I haven't had to take out a Bastila squad for a really long time. Beyond using my alt, you know, my alt in Arena for a while was only facing Bastila until everyone got Jedi Revan, and now we never see Bastila either. So I wished I had Bounty Hunters. Bounty Hunters take this team out pretty quick and easy. So and that there's all these different components too, because we have a reworked Ahsoka here, and we have Shaak Ti, and neither of those existed in the time that this matchup was going on. So a lot of uncertainty here. Ezra had his not only his Zeta, but he also had Relic 4, so he's going to hit like a truck, and he was well modded. So I wasn't really sure what to expect. But again, this matchup was not going to be necessarily the most difficult, I thought, just because there's a lot of different out of activation attacks and everything from all these different Jedi, and there's also a ton of buffs that are going out, and whenever people get buffs outside of their turn, Traya knocks down their offensive abilities, and so, you've got a lot of things that are punishing these Jedi, and whenever they take an out-of-activation attack, then they're also taking hits based on their max health, and you can't really see that because they have a huge amount of bonus protection, but it is happening in the background there. So you can see that I was able to take out R2, and that's a pretty big hit to the team, not because R2 is so strong against Traya, but just because he's passively buffing the rest of the team. And my first target here was always going to be Ezra, because he's the only one who can really provide enough offense to get through any of my defenses here. So, taking him out was a no-brainer. You want to do that. You'll notice that I did put Isolate on Bastila, and it was a question mark between Bastila and Shaak Ti, because Shaak Ti and Bastila are both support units that do some pretty good things for their squads. And in the end, I decided that I just didn't want that huge number of buffs going out from Bastila, and if the AI got it right and they stumbled upon putting them on Ezra could do some serious damage that I wouldn't be able to mitigate in time, probably. I mean, if he was able to take out Nihilus before I was able to take down most of the squad, I would most likely time out. Like, my team is not doing enough damage. You'll see, like, these guys still have all of their bonus protection, for goodness sakes. Like, it's a pretty easy match for them, unless if Nihilus is not here, it's easy for them to just time me out. And so, we're just marching along here, trying to knock down their bonus protection. We're playing the waiting game. The clock is starting to wind down at this point, though, and we have 2 minutes left, and luckily I did have Annihilate there from Nihilus. I actually think that maybe I should have annihilated Shaak Ti, just because of the kinds of things that Shaak Ti can do. Like, she can dispel and she can buff, and not all of her buffs are actually seen. Like, she has some long-term stacking buffs that are going on to characters as well throughout the match that you can't see, and so I probably should have taken her out. She has a bigger health pool, I think, than Ahsoka did, but they're both pretty high relics, and I don't think necessarily either of them are bad choices. I just think that maybe Shaak Ti would have been a little bit more good of an option. So you can see I've just taken a while to take these guys out. It is kind of a chore. I mean, they're all really high relics, so they have high health pools, and not much you can do about that. So I did manage to win comfortably here. 57 banners is about what you expect from Traya. You kind of want more, but that's just fine. 57 is good, and I did end up dropping like 11 banners total. So absolutely not my most efficient zone, but we got through it. And in the back, hallelujah, my opponent put Carth Old Republic and Phoenix, and Carth didn't even have a Zeta on him. So with those relatively fluff cake teams in the back there, I knew I was going to probably be able to beat that zone with almost any number of teams that I had remaining. And so the biggest question mark now was trying to take on this Neon zone here with the Darth Revan and the Jango Bounty Hunters and the Grievous squad. So the first order of business was trying to take out the Darth Revan team, and they didn't have Malak, so that was great, but I also did not have C-3PO, which would have been more ideal for this squad. And I decided to try General Skywalker here. I think this might honestly be the first time that I've ever used him, other than in my last match when I used him alongside Jedi Training Rey to mixed results. So I decided to use him instead of Barriss just because I was curious. And I don't know that curiosity is necessarily the best thing to be going off of if we're trying to counter a really strong Darth Revan team. And they were pretty well modded. They were decent. They all had really high relics, of course, which isn't what you want to see if you're trying to use a counter that you're not 100% on. But at the end of the day, like I was fairly confident. So I did make a mistake there initially with Ahsoka. She should have used her basic to dispel Sith Trooper there. She absolutely failed in that. She just used her special attack, which, I mean, maybe that's not a huge mistake. Because eventually someone is going to use their special and be able to call her to assist. So I don't really know. Here I was trying to use daze, get daze off on these guys, and the AoE did do some good damage, so no complaints really, but no one got dazed. And now I'm questioning if this team can actually be dazed. I'm not actually sure. So you know, I did get enough stacks of courage to just take the rest of this team out, and without Malik there to disrupt and potentially just stall me out, this was a pretty easy win. So 56 banners, that's not the best, and my banner total was pretty shot at this point. I think it dropped like 15 total banners in the last 3 matches, so 55 average, that's not the best. But I was taking on some really strong teams, and I was having a really hard time feeling bad about that. So the next squad up was going to be bounty hunters, because the bounty hunters are all really high relic, like they're all relic 4 or higher, and I'd never really faced a squad of bounty hunters that was this strong. And even though I was faster, I wasn't sure I'd be able to chew through all of their health and protection in time to get the first kill. So you know, you put buffs on everyone with Stark. After Stark goes, then Death Trooper throws his grenade and increases cooldowns. Then Range Trooper puts buffs on everyone. If you can get a kill there, that's great. At this point, you know, I got 2 kills, wonderful, and you know, I'm really just going nuts here. The Imperial Troopers really thrive on when your opponent just never gets any turns. You just feed the turn meter. So, you know, I did those first 3 moves, and then after that, everyone's just going to town. You know, yeah, I've targeted Boba because he had the lowest health pool, and if I could take him out once, then he'd revive. Then I could take him out a second time without any of his protection this time, and yeah, it went really smoothly. So 60 banners there. That's usually the case. If you don't beat bounty hunters with troopers with 60 banners, then it probably means you've lost. So I was really curious to see if I would be able to take on this General Grievous squad with my Jedi Knight Revan team, but at the end of the day, you need to get a win. You need to prioritize winning in Grand Arena and getting one-shots, because, you know, if I did happen to lose with my Jedi Knight Revan team against this team, it would potentially derail me a lot. You know, it's nice to have that cushion anyways with Jedi Revan being able to hang out in the back, you know, and provide some backup against any of these teams. And so the goal against the General Grievous squad here is to just try to get someone to under 50% health, after which you put Death Mark on him, and he becomes just easy to kill. So even though he had like 130, 150, I forget now, hit points and a bunch of protection, like he just goes down fast. And once you take him out, you know, then it's just a matter of cleaning everyone else up. So you know, in a way, this was kind of a wasted chance to see what this team can do, because my opponent did have really good mods on this team, and it was really scary. But using Jedi or Darth Revan against General Grievous is just kind of a hard counter, honestly, as long as you don't mess things up too bad. General Grievous can, if opportunity allows, of course, one-shot the whole team with his AoE, but that's more of a Grievous nuke team that can do that. So in the back, my opponent had Thrawn with Geonosians, which was a pretty good setup for me. I was happy enough with that. Even though I'd never faced Geonosians with the Negotiator, I was pretty confident that I'd be able to take them. But first, I wanted to take out these squads just because I was in the squad mindset, and frankly, I hate ships, and so I decided that I wanted to put that off. I was procrastinating. Now you'll see that I took out First Order Stormtrooper here in favor of Captain Phasma, and that's not necessarily what I want to do ever, but the feat that I'm trying to earn here required me to use Phasma alongside, I think, First Order Executioner, and so that's what I was going to do. You know, and taking on this Phoenix squad, it's a pretty tricky thing sometimes, you know, if my opponent has really strong Phoenix. And they did have a Relic 4 Sabine in here, and everyone else was had no Zetas. I don't think Sabine actually had a Zeta either. But everyone else was Gear 12, pretty slow, honestly. On the slow side, my opponent didn't have the greatest mods here, but you can see that I'm just doing single shots with Phasma because I didn't want them all to just counter attack and just kill her right off the bat, because we're trying to be banners conscious here. We're trying to get max banners, and you can't really do that if one of your members dies, because I don't have any revive mechanic available. So the one thing about this Phoenix squad is they don't really have any ways to be able to dispel other than Kanan. Kanan can dispel, and Hera can dispel if she has her Zeta, but she didn't have her Zeta, so pretty easy. You want to stun Sabine, and I always work on Sabine first if I can, because usually she's pretty squishy and easy to take out. That is not the case anymore. At Relic 4, she was super resilient. I just kept hitting her and hitting her, and her life pool, her health pool was immense. Really impressive. I kind of want to get my own Relic for Sabine now, which is a pretty big expenditure for a questionable gain, but I want to do it anyways, so we'll see what happens with that. Continuing with our single shots, because Kanan is still around, and even though he's stunned, the rest of the team is going to be able to counter, and Phasma's only gear 8 at this point, and I indifferently modded. I actually meant to get her a couple gear levels before lock, but I was foolish and just hit join like the second it was available, because that was my habit before. And that happens, whatever. That's a subject for another day. But I took out Chopper first there, if you guys were noticing, because Chopper is really frustrating when he is not stunned. If he's stunned, then you can hit him every time. Otherwise, he has like 25% evasion, and it feels like more. Like it just takes a while to take him out sometimes. And he's doing all this evasion stuff, and the Phoenix squad's taking a ton of turns. Things can go south pretty quick here. And so I was happy enough to take Chopper out first, especially because Hera hadn't given him the revive buff or anything. So take him out, then take Kanan out. You want to take the damage dealers out, then Kanan and the tanks, and then Zeb is actually a really big damage dealer. He does a lot of really great things if he has his Zeta, and so once again he didn't have his Zeta, and he didn't even have gear 12 at this point, so maybe I should have just targeted him early on just so he couldn't be a nuisance. But 59 banners using Phasma as the fifth member is pretty cool. Happy enough with that, even though I wanted a full 60, of course. 59, good enough. And finally we come to this really bizarre Carth team with no Zeta on Carth, no Zeta on Mission, 1 Zeta on Nest, and 1 on Zalbar, and that was it. And then they had a bunch of relics as well on the team. And I wanted to save Jedi Revan for this, just because this team can take out Nest really easily, and Relic 1, Nest, Relic 3, whatever it was that my opponent had, was still not going to be able to beat this. So talk about a knight with strange counters. I don't know that I've ever used Jedi Revan against Old Republic. I mean, I'm sure I have. So people are going to look at my counter sheet and point out like 5 different times that I've done it, but I couldn't remember any of the times. And I just know that I've actually used Revan lately to counter Nest, and that's not really my main go-to counter. It's just the thing that has happened to be working lately. So going into this match, you want to take out Nest as quick as you can. So I did a quick hit on her initially. Now she has her bonus protection, so as soon as she gets another turn, then we're going to take her, we're going to do more damage to her and just kind of keep whittling down her health pool. And so she did have a turn, and we were able to knock out all of her protection, and that's great. She didn't even hit me back, because it was the strategic advantage that Jedi Revan has. And he calls Yoda for an assist, which isn't eligible for a counter, and then Yoda calls Revan for an assist, which is also not eligible for that. So now we're just kind of playing the waiting game. We don't want any counters from Nest, because Nest can, obviously she counters, she heals her health pool, but also, she's dispelling buffs, and she's knocking out our health, which, we want to get as many banners as we possibly can. We've already lost, it really hemorrhaged a lot of different banners, and so, she's there and available to be able to have her health taken out again, and Jolie's called assist from Grandmaster Yoda was enough to take her out. Grandmaster Yoda at Relic 4, like he is for me, hits like a truck, and she just went down pretty quick and easy, and that's always nice. And beyond that, I couldn't tell what characters had full protection and which ones didn't, so I could have healed one of them, with an assist, a called assist, but I didn't know which one had max protection, because there was protection up there as a buff. So 59 banners, probably could have gotten 60 if I had been paying more attention, but 59 is okay. I'd already lost enough banners that I needed. My opponent probably needed him to fail at least one of their attacks. So moving into the fleet battle, I decided to just, initially I was just going to take the Umbaran fighter with 5s there. And I decided to stick with what I know, with Ahsoka and Jedi Knight Anakin up front. And really, I was just going in blind. I don't know. I probably should have tried to watch a video on this or something, but it just seemed like a really straightforward matchup. I already had a plan in place, so I decided to follow that. So first off, I was just trying to do some damage to Soldier. Eventually, I would get stuck behind the Sunfac buff, or rather taunt, and luckily though I did get the buff block on Sunfac, so I was able to prevent the taunt. However, he's effectively taunting right now anyways, because he has he's the only one who's not in stealth. So the second the other two came into stealth, or out of stealth, I wanted to target them, take out Soldier, because Soldier is the one who assists a lot and does a lot of things. They all have days on them as well though, from General Kenobi, so that's a pretty big deal as well. I did the AoE there. I could have targeted Sunfac there, but I wouldn't have been able to hit Soldier, and I was working on trying to get Soldier down, of course. So the AoE is nice, so I was able to take out Soldier, and then of course Bosk comes in. He's taunting, he's doing his annoying stuff, so this is all pretty standard. You do the taunt from General Kenobi first, then you want to put on the buffs, because at that point the unkillable buff from Jedi Knight Anakin has worn off. So refresh that, and at this point it's pretty easy mode. We're just trying to, I brought in Plo to heal everyone, and to heal him a second time and give him more turn meter. And Bosk happens to have buff immunity, so even though he's technically taunting right now, he can't gain any bonus protection. He can't gain anything. So I'm just trying to bide my time here and heal my guys up a little bit, trying to get as many banners as possible. And just looking at the different ability descriptions, and I was hoping that shot from Negotiator wouldn't kill him, so that I'd have a chance to regenerate a little bit more protection. But it is what it is. 61 banners, I think that's just fine. In general, that's a pretty good score against ships. So I did get the win here against the ships. I got one shot, or I did one shot against all of them. I did drop a few banners though, so maybe not the most efficient, but I was happy enough. And pretty soon after that, my opponent did make their attacks, which was nice. As you may be able to deduce from that video clip, I did manage to dodge a few bullets there. My opponent did make their attacks relatively early on, which is always appreciated. But my Grievous team, they apparently ran into some problems with him. 8 defenses is nice, of course, and then my Night Sisters, which are used to getting one shot, are still around. All of my teams up top did get one shot, so kudos to my opponent. Those are meant to trip people up and be nuisances, and apparently that didn't work. And then, of course, my back bottom zone did not get hit, because my opponent did not get through my initial defenses there. And then my fleet, actually, with Biston, got 3 defenses, so that's pretty nice as well. I've never gotten 3 defenses on fleet, so that's also pretty cool. So before a match, I always like to scout my opponents just to see what I might be able to expect. And I did notice that my opponent did not have a well-developed Darth Malak. One thing that I did completely fail to notice was, first, that they didn't have a very strong fleet presence, and no Negotiator or anything. And second, they didn't have Traya, which is shocking. Honestly, no offense to my opponent, I was just very surprised.
Whoa.
And I don't want to make a big deal of this. You know, it was surprising, and I wanted to show you guys all of my opponent's rosters and all the different factors that went into this. And, you know, it's just possible that my opponent did just have, you know, he was part of a guild that just isn't interested in doing raids or something. I'm not really sure, but, you know, missing a Traya team is a really important thing. It's a pretty big deal. So my opponent was really great. They contacted me first, which normally I have to be the one to contact them. You know, they said they conceded, and great match, and you know, I really appreciate that. That's really great sportsmanship. And beyond that, I was able to get the first order feats, both of them taken down, so that's always nice to finish. And then I apparently got 8 wins on my first attempt in my first round here, which is also nice. So this screenshot is fake. It's not fake, it's real, but 21, it did not hold. I think that before defenses were set and everything, I managed to go all the way back down to number 100 or something like that, but getting those feats actually gave me a pretty big boost, so that's pretty nice. And of course, all the people in Chromium who started the round in Chromium are facing each other, and 1/8 of those guys are going to lose all 3 of their matches this round, which is also kind of nice. That'll help my score a tiny bit at least. And I don't have any proof that I actually won the match because I'm not including a screenshot of that this time. So you guys will have to just trust me, please. And otherwise, you can see that I've put some gear onto Old Ben, so that'll be great to see what happens with him, trying to get a counter up for Commander Luke, or rather from General Skywalker, his father, so we'll just see how that goes. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.